Welcome to Dad's Watching Sports. It is Sunday, May the 31st, the last day of the month of May. Episode 17. We are so glad that you have chosen to join us, whether you're checking out the show on YouTube or on Facebook via video, or if you're just checking us out through Apple Podcasts, through Spotify, through all the different avenues that we display the show, or if you're checking this out for the first time on the RTF Sports Network, we appreciate that as well. But we are so glad you are here to participate in our show, whether it's we're talking dad stuff or sports stuff. We are glad that you're here. My name is Michael Draper, joined as always by Kyle Castles and Matt Kirk. We talk about some things that are dad appropriate for sports. We also talk about life in our household as dads. Most of us on this show have kids ages 5 and under. And of course, we always have some guests along the way. And we try to really kind of line up our guests over the summer. As everyone knows, there's not a whole lot going on in the sports world right now. And so we try to have as many guests as possible to join us to give their perspective on some of the sports news, but then also their life as a dad to kids as well. And this week is no exception to that. As we have Jason Hitchings joining us this week. Jason is going to join us and talk a little bit about the Last Dance documentary. He's from Chicago originally, and as you can see for his background there, has a lot of Chicago Bulls gear. So, Jason, thanks so much for joining us on the show this week. So just tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, some hobbies you have, and maybe some of your favorite sports teams, although I think we already have a good idea on that.
Sure. Thanks for having me. I've always wanted to go to a radio show and say, first, long-time listener, first-time guest. So I'll say that. So thanks for having me on. My wife, Amy, and I moved down here about a year and a half ago. We have 2 kids. Braden is 10 and Summer is 7. So a little bit older than 5. It only gets more fun. But Chicago suburbs, born and raised. So the Bulls in the 90s were a big thing. This gear is mine. There's much more Amy doesn't want me to anymore. But I'm also a season ticket holder for the Cubs. Still holding on to those. Have unfortunately not been able to use them this year. And I coached Braden's baseball team. I was an assistant coach for Summer's baseball team when she started this year. Other than that, it's church and sports and kids.
That's right. That's what seems like we all have going on as well. And again, Jason, thanks so much for being a part of the show and joining us this week. We're really looking forward to taking a deep dive into the Last Dance documentary. We'll do that when we come back from a break in just a little bit. But if you are joining us here on Dad's Watching Sports, as I mentioned over the past couple of weeks, we're officially on the RTF Sports Network. You can check them out at rtfsportsnetwork.com. You can check our show out on Mondays at noon Central. So make sure you do that. You can also check out the RTF Sports Network on the social media accounts. Speaking of social media, Dad's Watching Sports, we're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and we have now launched into the world of TikTok. I'll be honest, guys, I don't really know exactly what I'm doing, but I have put a couple of videos together. So if you have the TikTok app, go on to TikTok, search for Dad's Watching Sports, and hopefully you'll see some stuff that's maybe funny, probably a little cheesy, probably not that great content, but we want some feedback. We want to know what we should be providing on TikTok. And as always, you can interact with us through whether it be Facebook or Twitter or our email address as well. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can, or on Facebook, the video version of this, you see up above us and down below us, we've got all of our handles for our social media accounts. So make sure you check us out there. All right, guys, before we get into the kind of the meat of the show here, Matt's got a pretty good story he wanted to share concerning his daughter and maybe some things that have been going on in their household here recently. So, Matt, I will toss it over to you.
All right. I'll catch that real quick. We have been, working with Campbell on pulling up on furniture, and she's been walking around the couch like crazy. And she has finally broke the mold, and she is pulling up on furniture herself. She pulled up on our coffee table in our upstairs at our house. She pulled up and she walked around the couch, with holding on to the couch. She came back and then in there, and I thought, and I was talking to her, and she put her hand down, and then she just put her hand in and kind of felt around, and then she got her balance. And then put her other hand down. And then she just, kind of let go of the couch. And that was the first time she had gone from the couch to the floor all on her own, which I thought was really, really cool. And then she wanted to do it again. So then she pulled up again, and she went around and kept on doing it. And then now she gets to where she is pulling up on the couch, walking around, and then she'll come back over there and she'll sit, but she'll plop down on her butt. So it's really cool to see, how fast she's grown in that. And we've only been working with her on that for a really short time. When she started to show interest in it was whenever when we started teaching her. And it's just really taken off. It's insane, man. And she's growing so fast. It's wild.
It is, man. I think we can all agree that it's almost like every day, especially when they're that young. New things happen. I was going to get into this later in the show, but our son started walking during this quarantine, which we're very thankful for. We were really hoping we didn't have to send him back to school, and he still wasn't walking, and he started doing that. So it's so cool to see those big moments that happen. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on. What are some of the highlights and maybe some lowlights that have happened during the safer at home quarantine with COVID-19? Guys, if you remember last week, I gave a little bit of a story about my neighbor. Jason, I don't know if you caught the episode, but essentially I've got a neighbor that parks his truck or was parking his truck towards the back end of his driveway that was causing the tail end of his truck to be over the sidewalk. It's just, to be honest with you, is we do a lot of walking around here, a lot of running, and it was just annoying to have to get off the sidewalk onto the road every single time. Well, I can actually update. Our neighbor must be a listener, and thank you, neighbor, for listening to the show because the truck has been moved. It's been pulled up all the way into the driveway, and we have a nice, clean sidewalk to walk on. We utilized that this morning with the kids. So not only is it good news that he's a listener, but it's pretty awesome that he moved his truck up. So, guys, I didn't even have to say anything. He listened to the show and took the initiative, which is pretty exciting. One thing we wanted to get into while we still got a few moments before our first commercial break and before we get into the Last Dance documentary is I don't think we can really go on this show. We all kind of were in agreement beforehand without kind of talking about what's going on in our world. Yes, this is a sports show. Yes, we're talking about things that go on in our lives as dads, but this is also about just things that go on in our world. We've been talking about COVID-19 for the past 3 months. That's what's going on in our world. And in the United States, obviously there's been some developments over really the past week that have led to some conversations and to some things that have gone beyond that. And we wanted to bring it up. And obviously talking about the George Floyd murder that happened there in Minneapolis, kind of the civil unrest that's come from that. We've seen some peaceful protests. We've also seen some destruction. So I guess let me preface with this. We're very aware of the fact that, guys, we're 4 white Caucasian males that are going to be talking about this topic. And so there are some things that we can't identify with. And there's some things that we can speak on, but it may not carry a whole lot of weight. And that's just the fact of the matter. But Kyle, I wanted to toss it to you first. Just any overall thoughts on what's been kind of going on the past couple of days? And, here we are, we find ourselves again with some civil unrest based off of something that just should not have happened. So I'll toss it to you first.
Yeah. So I struggle. I look and, the Fendo Castile murder to me is one of the worst ones that involves, a police officer and an African-American person. That one really bothered me because he did everything. Fendo Castile did everything right. He had a gun. He had it lawfully. He told the cop he had a gun. He told the cop he was reaching for his license. Cop freak shot him. There's a problem there. George Floyd, from everything I can see, looks like he did everything right. Supposedly he was trying to pay with counterfeit bills or something, but you don't see any resistance. He did everything right. What is interesting here is that after the Fendo Castile murder, nothing really happened to that cop. The cop that had his knee on George Floyd's neck 6.5 minutes is fired and is up on murder 3 charges. Everybody knows my wife's an attorney, and she's in Facebook groups with other attorneys. They got their hands on the grand jury documents and shared them, and what it looks like is they probably could have got him on at least murder 2 charges. So there's a little bit of they probably undercharged him, but at least he's been fired. He's up on charges already. which he should be. So I totally understand getting out and maybe marching and saying, we're doing this because we still have this problem. So yeah, the wheels of justice turn slow. They're not turning. It does no one any good to do the violence, to commit the violence, to commit the vandalism. I'll call it what it is, the terrorism that we have seen over this weekend in major cities across this country.
I'll argue that I don't know that the people that are going out and protesting, or it seems like it's pretty widely known that those aren't the same individuals that are doing the rioting and the terrorism that you're.
Mike, me and you, we live just south of Nashville. You look at those that were arrested in Nashville last night. Of the 28 names that I saw, 2 of them were out of state. The other 26, all lived in Davidson County, Tennessee. Check that. One of them was from Saudi Daisy, so out in East Tennessee. But still, the 26 others were from the state of Tennessee. So I do think there is some of the Antifa, some of just pure anarchists that are out there looking to, make a stink, cause trouble, whatever. But I do think there's some others that are out there that are part of this thing. The majority of people who are protesting are part of the violence of the terrorism, but there is a group. It's a smaller group, but there is a group. And to sit there and say, well, all from out of state, they're all these professional anarchists or these professional whatever. Yes, there's some of that. It's some of the other. Let's just be really honest. It does no good. It does no good.
I echo a lot of the same things, and the part that hit home for me last night is, my mother-in-law was showing me the thing on Facebook. She saw an article about the courthouse, the Metro courthouse. I mean, I go there. We court a lot less here in Tennessee than I did when I was in Chicago, but that is the courthouse I go to, and it was on fire yesterday. So, I don't know to what extent the damage was. I was trying to check on that this morning. The whole thing is a tragedy. Mm-hmm. What happened and now the aftermath, that's how I would describe it. And, you kind of see when you gauge social media, you see a lot of, the peaceful protest stuff, and you see the quotes from Martin Luther King Jr. And those are the kind of things that I feel like it's easier to get behind. And I never have. Going back to Rodney King and all that, I never understood the rioting and the looting and what that was accomplishing for a cause. And I did see recently someone commenting about the Boston Tea Party. And I don't completely agree with the metaphor, but they were basically saying, that the colonists that were involved in the Boston Tea Party were basically sick of the king and the government not listening to them. They didn't know what else to do. They had tried things by peaceful means, and this was the best that they could come up with. And we as a country champion a lot of what happened there at the Boston Tea Party, right? As the turn of the revolution, and then we ended up winning the war. And I don't completely see those things as symbiotic, but it was an interesting take. And I don't know what you guys would think about something like that. But I think it's senseless, but I'm not in the position. And I think, like you said, it's hard for us as 4 white males to probably put ourselves in those shoes. Absolutely. And I think the call that I've seen a lot lately is, we need to start caring about everybody. We have a saying at our church that is, love everyone always. And it doesn't matter what color you are, what gender you are, where your background is, where you came from, you're still a human being. And everybody needs to be treated as such. So.
Absolutely. No, I agree. And I saw that same Boston Tea Party thing. And, quite frankly, I kind of agreed with it in the fact that, like you just said, they felt like the government wasn't listening to them, and they had to make some drastic measures in order to get something accomplished. Guys, we got to catch a quick break. Matt, when we come back, we'll get your take, but we're going to go to a quick break. You're listening to Dad's Watching Sports. We will be right back. And we're back here on Dad's Watching Sports. Thanks for joining us. It's episode 17, Sunday, May 31st. Michael Draper, Matt Kurt, Kyle Castles, Jason Hitchings joining us. We're going to talk all things The Last Dance documentary. Jason, born and raised in the Chicago area, and was there for a majority, if not all, of the Bulls dynasty that rose in the late 80s, early 90s to mid 90s, and we're going to talk about that in depth, but definitely wanted to touch base with Matt really quickly. We had just, before we went to break, really talked a lot about the George Floyd murder that happened up in Minneapolis, and then some of the aftermath that had gone on for that. And again, we recognize it's hard for us as all white males to be able to put ourselves in that position of what we might do or how we might feel after that. But we're just trying to talk it through because I think we can all be in agreement that something horrific happened and something has to happen moving forward for this to not happen again or something similar. So Matt, I'll pass it off to you and just want to get your take, and then we'll move into The Last Dance.
Man, it's a really sad time. That there are people out there, and I've never been prejudiced against. I've never had any racism pointed my way. And I don't know how it feels. I don't want to pretend to know how it feels, because that would be, that would be unfair to those who have had it done to them. And as a man and as a father, and I just couldn't imagine how that feels to be scared to walk out and to trust those who, that you can't trust those who are supposed to serve and protect us, and to do the right thing, and then to be treated like that until to lose your life. That, I'm not sure his family situation, but he's probably a husband and a father to someone, and that's how he's gonna go out, and to be treated that way and just to be in his family. I couldn't imagine. But man, there's got to be something done for sure. It's got to stop. I was into a friend of mine, and just expressing that I don't know what to do, and I asked him for some guidance on how to help and things I can do for the community, African American community. And he said just to treat everyone the same. And he said to listen and to care, and just to treat people the same. And man, that kind of goes back to to me, of being raised the right way. And and we're going to touch on this, I know, but and I wouldn't want to raise my kid any other way than to be respectful to everyone. And it just really breaks my heart, and I pray for that community.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think we can all agree, like I said, that there's been some unfortunate events, and we all here are Christians, and our thoughts and prayers are with everybody involved, not only his family, but anybody that's been impacted by this situation or situations in the past, and those that we're all kind of in the Nashville area, or Matt used to be here, and some businesses that had just opened up on Broadway following COVID-19 have been impacted again. And so our prayers are with those people as well. It's just a bad situation all around. And I look forward to our entire country moving forward. And I'm kind of with you, Matt. I think, what our role is, what can we do to help people move forward and to get past this and to make sure that these types of things never happen again. So guys, thank you for indulging me on that. I just felt like it was very important for us to talk through that, because it's something that's going on big in the world, and it's something that's going to, impact us in one way or the other in our lives. And hopefully we can respond the appropriate way and help people kind of move forward and move beyond that type of behavior. This is a sports show, and so we're going to shift gears, and it's a terrible transition. I apologize, but The Last Dance documentary, it's one of the main reasons we've got Jason on as a Chicagoan. But guys, it's over. We've been a couple of weeks removed, so it's given everybody time to kind of catch up on the episodes and really kind of contain your thoughts about everything to do with The Last Dance. So Matt, I'm gonna go ahead and pitch it right back to you. Just very briefly, just kind of overall thoughts, maybe just a sentence or two, overall thoughts just on the entire documentary series.
Classic Matt.
That's right.
So there's no denying it. Jordan hasn't had a problem with sales for a really long time. But I've read online, they said that that the sales and the merchandise and Jordan, jerseys and T-shirts has just gone through the roof. And that's really cool. And also, Scottie Pippen was portrayed in a pretty bad way in this documentary. I'm thinking there may have been some bad blood there between Jordan and him, and that maybe Jordan was a little bit salty for the way that Pippen handled some situations. And to me, I thought the best part of this was all the drama with the Dream Team. And I think those practices may have been better than any NBA game that's ever been played. Just back and forth and all those great players all playing against each other. I think it would have been really cool to be a part of or to experience and see.
Without a doubt. Jason, overall thoughts, and then, again, you lived there, you were a part of this. What was it like being a Bulls fan, specifically being there in the city of Chicago from really that, like 88, 89 to 98, that decade there of Bulls dominance?
I mean, once they made it over the hump of the Pistons, it was expected they were going to win a championship every year. I mean, our summers, we got out of school, and the next week was Bulls parade in Grant Park. I mean, that's how it was all the time. So, I mean, this whole show was kind of the roller coaster of renewed emotions for me with the retirement and coming back. And, I told someone that this was akin to, how Stranger Things is a novelty to people who grew up in the 80s. And they love it because of all the things they see. Like, I loved this show because it's the 90s and it was my childhood. So for me, I think, I have a unique perspective. I have a ton to say about it, but I won't take all the time. But there were some very interesting things that I think we knew at Chicago. We knew a lot of this stuff. There was really nothing surprising, but there were some small little stories that were nice to hear. So,
Kyle, what about some surprises that you saw along the way? Maybe something you weren't aware of during the time, because we all grew up during this era. Maybe something that you weren't aware of at the time that kind of came out to light in this documentary that now you're thinking, man, wow, that really surprised me.
Yeah, I thought, growing up, it never occurred to me that you could, play a team sport and dislike someone on your team. But that Jordan Pippen relationship, man, it was pretty rocky. And so that kind of shocked me. It's just something I never thought of. But I don't feel like if you go and you take some of the quotes Pippen said, even, when they were recording his stuff for this documentary, he didn't present himself well either. So I don't think he can really blame the editing or Jordan or whoever else. Like, he had some quotes that were bad. But the biggest surprise to me was just how normal Dennis Rodman was. I said that when we talked about that episode. I mean, this is the same guy who walked around in a wedding dress, and he's gone to North Korea and out with Kim Jong-un. Like, he's actually a normal dude with logical thoughts. So that's okay. Much more logical than I would have given him credit for. How about that?
I was gonna say, let's put an asterisk beside that comment, but yes,
I got you.
I'll give you that.
You're right. I am. I think what Dennis Rodman is highly intelligent, and I think that's what came across as somewhat cogent thoughts. But I think that he also, he may be, he's got something going on. But yes, I think he's a very, very smart man, and the way that he broke down players that he played with, like how he would go about rebounding on certain player shots, that was amazing to hear. And it shows why he was one of the best rebounders the game's ever seen.
He has a great, he has a great ability to get the rebound, and he's a great basketball player. But man, that I wouldn't want to be his teammate after him taking those hiatuses like that and going to Vegas and and then going and being on WWE, in the middle of in the NBA Finals. That's insane, man.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, when you're playing with a team, as long as that guy shows up on game day and performs the way he did, you don't really care what he does outside of that.
But you have to be a part of the team. You have to be there to build camaraderie with your teammates. And who knows if you're actually going to show up or not. I'm sure that they trusted him because they played 82 games to play with him. But still, to me, I'd want that trust to be there that you're going to show up.
Yeah, I think the first time he went out would bother me. But, I played in junior college. I played with a guy that, found ways out of practice every single day. But come, Thursday night in JUCO or those Saturday games, nobody could touch him. and he did what he did. And so we all just went, you know what, we'll take him, find a way out of practice because he gives us a shot to win.
And I think he was lucky to have a guy like Jordan with him, because Jordan would go out and play 36 holes of golf, smoke cigars all night, and come in and score 50. So he knew that if he was able to do it, and he was holding Rodman to the same thing and accountability, that it would get done.
And the accountability from the coach, to me, that was pretty interesting too. He was really cool about, Dennis can go and do what he wants and he'll be back. And that they trusted he would come back and be ready to play. But I understand him needing a peace of mind, but it was just crazy. Like, that wouldn't fly now. If that happened now, that would be all over the internet.
Well, Matt, one thing you hit on was the coach, and that was my biggest surprise. I mean, obviously, you look at the titles that Phil Jackson has won, and he's right up there with Red Auerbach in terms of number of titles, and most people think he's the greatest NBA coach of all time, or at least in the top couple. But man, just the way he was able to manage that team, he knew exactly what buttons to push, what guys to put in what roles. I thought that was my biggest surprise, is just not knowing what type of coach. Yeah, the X's and O's, that's all. If anybody's ever coached any sport, the X's and O's, they don't change. Nothing changes about those other than a couple of wrinkles that you could put in or whatever. But it's all about how you manage the players, and then obviously about the players that you have. And I was just blown away with the Zen Master for the way that he was able to really kind of rein in that team over the course of that period of time. Jason, a couple questions I had for you. Just kind of some quick hitters. In the city of Chicago, is Jordan the greatest athlete ever in that city from a native Chicagoan?
Yeah, I'm going to answer that question in 1 second. I want to tail off on what you said on Phil Jackson. My surprise that I wrote down was Phil Jackson, but it's how little credence and credit they actually gave him in the show.
Yeah. I
felt like he should have had more than one episode devoted to him, and it was only like half an episode, I think. What was it, 3 or 4? I think episode 4. But no, Jordan is not only, I think, the biggest and greatest athlete Chicago has seen. I think he's probably the greatest in the world. And maybe I'm biased, but I mean, you tell me someone who did something for a single sport in worldwide, like Michael Jordan did, like David Stern said in the final episode, they were in 80 countries before Jordan and 215 after. I mean, he's a brand genius. And I mean, he did things that no one had ever seen and probably will ever see again.
Yeah,
his competitive nature is just crazy.
Yeah, it is, and that's one thing I wanted to touch on. We're going to have to go to a break in just a second, but what you kind of wanted to hit on something that you mentioned, Jason, about the from a brand standpoint and the greatest athlete, just to be able to drive that sport. I think Tiger probably would be the only person that I can think of that rivals, because golf, especially in the African American community and younger players, was non-existent until Tiger Woods came along, and then he just blew the sport of golf up. But Jordan is definitely up there without a doubt. Well, guys, we're right up against a break here, but when we come back, we'll continue with some talk about the Last Dance documentary. There's so much to talk about with this, and now that we've had a couple of weeks to take it all in, digest it, we want to continue to talk about Michael Jordan, the greatest of all time, and the Chicago Bulls. We'll ask Jason who he thinks is the best Bull teams of all time. Was it one of the original three-peat or the second three-peat? And we'll talk much more. Plus, is Madden Football the greatest video game of all time? We know there's going to be a lot of guys, not only on this show, but that listen to this show, that have some hot takes about that one. And before the show's over, I've got to give a quick shout out to the newest member of our family. All that and more coming up after this break. But first, that lawn fertilizer isn't going to pay for itself. And dads love a good-looking lawn. So let's take a break for some ads. We've got Jason Hitchings in the house. Kyle, I used to play college football at Castles, the Matt Kirk, and I'm just simply Michael Draper. You're listening to Dad's Watching Sports. We will be right back after this break. And we're back here on Dad's Watching Sports, the podcast all about the ins and outs of what's going on in the sports world and also our life as dads. Michael Draper, Kyle Castles, Matt Kurt, Jason Hitchings. We're talking all things The Last Dance. We've given everybody a couple weeks to get caught up and to really kind of soak it in and think about just how awesome it was. We've talked about if you grew up in the 90s, this was the greatest thing ever. We've talked about what it is like to have lived there in the city of Chicago, as Jason mentioned. We talked about some of the things with Dennis Rodman and how they were able to kind of keep him reined in. But one question that I think the answer is pretty obvious, but I'm going to poll the group. Kyle, we'll start with you first. Did this documentary help or hurt Jordan's legacy? Because it kind of portrayed him in the fact that he was a little bit of a jerk, and a little bit is a lot of a stretch. The guy was a jerk, but he just won at any level that you could win at. So did this help or hurt his legacy, Kyle?
There's no way it hurt his legacy. Nothing can ever change the fact that he is the greatest, I'll say it again, and I know Matt's going to argue with me, but the greatest athlete of all time. Although it does, it makes me wonder. For me, there's no way it's going to hurt his legacy. It definitely, I don't know, it helps it, but it can't hurt it. But it starts those what ifs. And that 98, 99 season, like if we could have gotten that season, I would have loved to seen that Bulls team see that Spurs team that ended up winning that next title with the Admiral and Duncan both playing down low, because I don't know if that Bulls team could have actually found a way. Phil is Phil, and he may have been able to figure it out. But did they have the pieces to stop those two low post players? And I think that was Tim's second year in the league. So I just think that would have been a fun series to watch.
For sure. Matt, you mentioned the mentality and the competitiveness of Michael Jordan, and I'll let you tack on to this question. We're all dads here, and we want to push our kids, obviously, to be the best that they can be. And just taking that mentality that he had, is that something that you feel like you can adapt or twist, I guess, in a way to put on your children and just the way that they grow up, and not just in sports, but just kind of in everything in life? Or was it maybe a little bit too much?
I think it was, it's a lot for sure, but man, to be successful in life, you have to be quick to the draw. And there's an old saying that Kyle probably knows called "slow feet don't eat," and you have to really, really work your butt off, and you have to be the best. You have to want to be the best, and as competitive as even careers are now these days, you have to be competitive. And I want my daughter for sure to be competitive like that. I want her to have that, that mentality that it's either you or me, and it's not going to be you.
Yeah. Jason, your kids are a little bit older than ours, so you're definitely in that area of life where you're teaching these things to your children, and probably already have. What about you? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I've always celebrated how good Michael Jordan was, and he likes Harden, and I'm like, I don't know why, but to an extent, I get it. But he tells me now after watching, because I let him watch The Last Dance. He's 10. So we watched the censored version, which if you watch the censored version, it wasn't censored either. And he just pointed out, Dad, that was a bad word. I said, yes, it was, son, and don't repeat it, or you're never going to watch anything with me ever again. But he wants to be better than Michael Jordan now. And I think, on the first part of the conversation, Jordan did a great thing by putting this video out, or this documentary out, in that, as competitive as he is, he's irked every time somebody compares someone else to him, whether he believes it or not, because he doesn't believe they're better. But I think he wanted to put it to rest with a new generation of people who had never seen him play, that he is the best, and this is why. I like my son is competitive, but we try to teach him humility all the time. And so you can believe in your heart that you are the best, but you don't need to flaunt it. You don't need to brag about it. So to that point, Jordan bragged about it, right? Jordan laughed when people said that they were better than him, could handle him. And he made a personal vendetta about going out and getting guys who talk to him in the media. So, you don't want that. But I think in everything, there's a teaching moment with your kids. And it's just when you're watching when I was watching with Braden, I could sit there and I could say, look, what did he do right? What did he do wrong? And so I think that it's a great example, but perhaps Michael Jordan is the greatest ever because he's a jerk.
You talked to when we first kind of jumped into the Last Dance topic. You mentioned, you said, "Hey, I could go on forever, but I want to take all the time." I mean, I'm just going to kind of give you the opportunity here. Like, again, what are just some memories that you had being in the city? You know, whether it was those post celebration parades, or just anything that you can kind of remember offhand of thinking, man, like seeing this brought back that memory.
I mean, I think just some of the shots, like, the first shot over Craig Elo. I remember I was at a house I had never been to before, but my mom's cousin in Park Ridge. I remember exactly where I was watching that shot go through the basket. And it was like that for a lot of different points. You know, my family was from Northwest Indiana originally, then we moved to the suburbs of Chicago. And I remember being in a family friend's house watching the Jazz series in '97 and seeing Kerr hit that shot. And just the whole thing just was a flood of memories for me. And it's just funny how, people say, well, I knew where I was when, Kennedy got shot or something like that. Like, I remember where I was for almost every big Bulls moment there was, which, maybe that makes me a shallow sports person, but, it was just, it was great. I loved the entire thing. And, there's so much to be said about the first couple episodes and the Jerry Krause and the Pippen. One other thing that I wanted to discuss, and I'll make it real brief because this is your guys' rodeo and I'm just along for the ride, but it was interesting to me when I would see the clips talking about Scottie Pippen in the media. And I didn't remember as a kid, 14 through 18, however old I was, I don't remember the media being the way that they are now and kind of trying to skew your opinion one way about somebody. Mm-hmm. And when I rewatched that, I was like, man, they did do that back then. And I remember kind of vilifying myself, Scottie Pippen, like being, why is he being so selfish? What does it matter? And so that was kind of a thing for me, is that, the media has always been around and the media is always trying to, I guess this is media, but we're trying, you're trying to sway opinions and get the talking heads out there. I do remember not liking Jerry Krause, and I do remember for a time not liking Scottie Pippen. I'm just glad they got it together in time to make it work.
That they did. All right, so one last question I've got for you about this, and then we'll move on to some other topics. So you've got kind of you've got the before Jordan's first retirement Bulls, and then you've got the second three-peat team. If you took like the best collection of players from the first three-peat versus players from the second three-peat, who do you think's winning a 7-game series amongst the Bulls inter-squad?
That '96 team was the best team ever. So that one right there.
Yeah, I think most people would probably agree with that. I think that was the team that the Warriors ended up breaking their record in terms of wins and losses for a regular season. But yeah, they were just head over heels. And then I'll ask you one last question: who do you feel like was the best opponent they played in the finals?
I remember being the most frightened of the Suns with Charles Barkley. I mean, he was the MVP of the league that year, and that was a tough test for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's cool. And hopefully those that, if you're listening to the show and you haven't checked it out, go check out the documentary. It's all over ESPN. I'm sure you can find it anywhere. It's awesome, especially if you're a kid of the 90s. It's we can't really tote it enough. One other thing that we wanted to talk about in terms of like an ESPN documentary style type program, most of you guys have probably seen that are listening, and I know all of us have probably seen and witnessed the Lance Armstrong 30 for 30. Episode 1 debuted last week. It's only 2 parts. But guys, Kyle, I'll pitch it to you first. Did you watch it? What did you think about it? Is he the greatest cheater of all time? What did you think about Lance Armstrong and his 30 for 30?
Yeah, I couldn't care less about Lance Armstrong or the Tour de France or biking or whatever. So have I watched it? No. Is he the greatest cheater of all time? I don't know. I mean, my guess would be there's somebody out there that has cheated and has gotten completely away with it. And I would say they have to be the greatest because they got away with it. I don't care about Lance Armstrong. I could make some kind of joke about being half a man, but I figured probably not best to do.
Kyle, so we put out a Twitter poll last week and about this and said, who is quote the best cheater? We had Lance, Tiger, A-Rod, or the Russian Olympians. And Lance won in a landslide. Have you had a chance to check it out? And maybe what were some of your thoughts?
Well, I'm not on social media, so no, I didn't check it out. I think Tiger is kind of funny because his cheating was a little different. I don't know. Like, sure, fine. He's the greatest shooter of all time. Does that make it better? I don't know. I don't care. I don't like Lance Armstrong.
Matt, what about you?
Well, I don't think that he was the best shooter of all time, and you left out by far one of the best cheaters of all time as Mr. Tom Brady. He's for sure the best shooter of all time. But him and Lance both had deflated balls. Oh, that was a bad joke. Sorry. But Lance Armstrong, I didn't watch the documentary. I've seen some bits and pieces of it, on ESPN. But I haven't really sat down and watched it, but I'd want to because it's just interesting and it's sports history. And I remember, hearing about his races and how dominant he was. And, in my opinion, everybody can take steroids. Everyone can take performance-enhancing drugs. And if that's what you want to do, by God, I think you should be able to do it. And yeah, there's obviously some things, that can go wrong with you physically, but that going into it. And I think it makes sport a lot more entertaining. Just my personal opinion.
Half of the roster from the WWF, now turned WWE from the 1980s, would probably adamantly disagree with you for that last statement if they were around, to be honest with you. But I actually watched it, and the one thing that I really took away from it, really two things. One, if you thought Michael Jordan was a jerk, you're sorely wrong, because Lance Armstrong is an absolute jerk, and he has been since he was a kid. But he was also really good. I mean, he was racing professionally at the age of 15. He started out as a triathlete, actually started out as a swimmer, became a triathlete, and then became a cyclist when he realized that was his strongest suit. And then he talked about, he started doping at the age of 21. That was the year he won his first world championship. And then it just kind of took off from there. But a jerk, but the guy was darn good. And he was before he started doing the doping to go along with it. Jason, any quick thoughts? Have you had a chance to see it? And if so, what'd you think? If not, you join the crowd of not really caring about Lance Armstrong and that he's nobody cares about him.
So to an extent, I agree with Kyle. I did get in. I rooted for him when he was racing. I never watched the Tour de France, but I do remember wanting the American to win. I'll go that far, but it's long. I mean, the first episode's 2 hours, and I kept thinking, when is this going to be over? Maybe it's because I don't have interest in it, but it was an interesting story. You talk about the greatest cheaters, I guess a greatest cheater, right, would be someone who didn't get caught, so you wouldn't even know they were cheating.
True.
The names that in my head are Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, kind of the baseball steroid HGH thing. What's in the documentary is basically, and if you believe Lance and everyone else that was talking, it was widespread. I mean, everybody was doing it. And if you weren't doing it, you weren't going to win. Not that that's an excuse, and I would never tell my kid that's okay. I would want him to be the one with integrity, doing it the right way, and losing every single race. But you got to cheat. Tanya Harding is probably what I would say is the greatest cheater, because not only did she, herself in the sport, but she also physically harmed somebody else.
Yes, she did. I'd actually forgotten about Tanya Harding and Nancy Kerrigan and that whole debacle that happened. Guys, we're going to shift gears. If you are a fan of Lance or the Tour de France or racing or anything, check out the second episode of the 30 for 30, and maybe we'll talk about it. Maybe we won't on future episodes. It didn't seem like it carried a whole lot of weight with this group this week, but we'll move forward. Guys, we just got some news that the John Madden Football video game was extended through 2026 with EA Sports. They're going to continue to produce the game. It's a hot topic for all, not only gamers, but people that, we don't have anything else going on right now, so might as well put in some Madden and play. Jason, I know it's a big game at your house. Is Madden the greatest video game of all time? And, when I saw this question that I'd posed to you guys, I thought, well, I didn't really mention, is it like the best sports video game of all time or the best video game period? So if you have a differing opinion, let us know. But is it the best game ever, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, so I asked the expert in my house. The expert is my 10-year-old son. He talks about Madden constantly and knows all of the statistics. So he said it's not the best video game ever. He said, "Do you mean the best sports game ever?" And I said that's a terrific question. I'll have to ask Michael. But I came from Tech Mobile and Full Dribble and Bases Loaded, and I love those games. So you give me, Bo Jackson and Tech Mobile, and I'll play that all day.
And you'll win because you'll score every time he touches the ball.
Absolutely.
Matt, what about you? I know you're a big video game guy. Is it the best game ever, best sports game ever, however you wanted to interpret that?
Man, no, not even close. It's declined over the years for sure, and I sure thought that because the NFL has recently signed a deal with 2K Sports for them to take over their arcade style game, not a simulation style. Which whole nother topic for a whole nother show there on the two styles. But and I was sure hoping that 2K would push Madden because Madden just doesn't have any competition. Now it's going to be exclusive for another 5 years. Honestly, I'm probably not going to be buying it, for this year if there's not some pretty big changes. The career mode in 07 was the best one, and I loved the gameplay in 07 the best. That's also the year that I started playing it on a more competitive style, playing tournaments and playing online, and actually achieved a pretty high online rating or a high online ranking. I was like in the top 100 when I was a freshman in college, which I'm sure my professors wish I wouldn't have because my grades would have been better. Yeah, it's not even close. The college football game, NCAA football, is the best video game, best sports game of all time.
I'm going to disagree with you on both of those counts. I think the best video game ever, if you go back to the Nintendo 64 GoldenEye, the James Bond game, is by far. It was the first game to really do the multiplayer deal, and by far that's the best video game ever. The best sports video game ever is no contest. It's FIFA. FIFA Soccer is by far the best sports video game. It's the most realistic. They've got it's just by far the best. Kyle, I know you're a big Madden fan. Is it the best game ever? And then what has been your favorite version throughout the years of Madden as well?
So I don't like the way the question's worded. Is it the best video game? I don't know. Like, there's the best game. I mean, I think you're right. The best video game, GoldenEye, slappers only, or paintball mode. Pick one, right? Exactly. Best sports video game? I don't know. I mean, FIFA's had some good additions. MLB The Show, the stuff that Sony's put out, has been really good. NBA 2K, they got some great games in their series. But if you want to talk about the greatest sports video game franchise, yeah, they're hands down, it's Madden. I mean, John Madden Football started in 87, 88 on the computer, somewhere in there, and has continued on every year, almost. Early on, I think they had 2 or 3 years in between games, but since about 95, I think, they've been every year. Mm-hmm. Definitely best sports video game franchise ever. Best version, I had Madden 97 for the Super Nintendo. And, man, I played that thing for hours. There was no franchise mode. It was just season mode. But I can remember playing every single game in the season with the New Orleans Saints and winning every game. Didn't have to worry about salary cap on it. And so I would go out and, I grabbed John Elway to be my quarterback every time because you get grades and stuff. It was great.
Yep, my best version was 96 the year before. That was when the creative player mode came out on Madden, and you could go through the training camp, and they had this thing that was called Coach Rogers, and you'd have to do the up, down, right, left, and it was just really awesome. And that was also when they brought in the new franchise teams for Jacksonville and Carolina, which was really cool. Guys, we're really up against our time frame here, but I had one more question I wanted to get to everybody. Best player ever on Madden? I'm going to vote first, without a doubt, Michael Vick. Untouchable. There's never been a player like him on Madden. There never will be. Really quick, one answer. Kyle, who's your best ever?
I got Vic in Madden 04.
Matt.
I am going to go with Deion Sanders.
Jason.
Devin Hester 08. I'm kidding. Michael Vick 04.
There we go. That's pretty good. Well, guys, we got to get out of here. Jason, man, thank you so much for joining us on the show. We really appreciate it. It was really cool again to kind of go down memory lane and talk through The Last Dance, and as someone who has witnessed. But we appreciate you coming on and sharing some of your knowledge with us all about the Bulls of the '90s. So thanks a lot.
It was a lot of fun. Thanks.
Absolutely, guys. We will see you next week on Dad's Watching Sports. I want to give a quick shout-out to my brother-in-law and his wife, Mark and Kinsey. They had a baby boy just a couple of days ago, Elliot Franklin Bottler. Welcome to the family. Guys, we will be back next week. Chris LeBron. It's not the LeBron, Matt, but it is Chris LeBron of Off the Ball podcast who's going to join us. He put out a list about the top 75 WWE wrestlers of all time and his top 75 NBA players of all time. We're going to go through both lists, let him know who he's got right, who he's got wrong, and things of that nature. I also want to give you a heads up on others that we've got booked coming up on the show over the next couple of weeks and months. As you know, there are not really a whole lot of sports going on for us to talk about, and so we're trying to get just some great guests over the next couple of weeks. You know, we had Peter Breeden, the fly fishing guide last week. We've also had Matthew Groark with the Groark Boys Barbecue. So we're just trying to kind of get our way around all this fun stuff that dads enjoy, and we're going to continue to do that as we've got some great guests coming up along the way. As I mentioned, Chris LeBron from Off the Ball podcast is joining us next week, and other upcoming guests include Michael Buchester, the CEO of RTF Sports Network, will be joining us the following week. We're really looking forward to that. As I mentioned, we have joined the RTF Sports Network. We've got Kyle and Shane from the Frustration Nation podcast who will also be joining us this summer. And then two guests that I am super excited about coming up this summer. Ryan Lemond of the Kentucky Sports Radio empire that goes on up there in Lexington will be joining us on the show this summer. Now, last summer, Ryan did a bit called Putt for Prison. So we're going to ask him all about that. It was really funny and a great way for those guys to raise some money for people in their area. And also, he's a dad of 3 adopted boys, and we want to talk to him about that. And then later this summer, we're going to be joined by Peter Burns of the SEC Network. Peter put out a tweet a few weeks ago talking about the joys of bedtime with his young kid and trying to get his kid to sleep. So we'll have him on to talk dad life and the SEC Network. But we will be back next week on Dad's Watching Sports. We appreciate you checking us out each and every week. Go into Apple Podcasts, give us a subscription, give us a review. Go ahead and rate us as well. Share us out there and check us out on the RTF Sports Network Mondays at noon. And check us out on TikTok. We'll put out some quality stuff. I'm not going to lie. Matt even talked about it on our Instagram earlier. So we will see you next week on Dad's Watching Sports. Y'all take care now.